We live in the most connected time in human history, but we are more isolated, more fragmented, and more spiritually adrift than ever before. Welcome to We Have a Spiritual Problem, a podcast where we explore the cracks in our culture, our consciousness, and our assumptions, and ask what those cracks are trying to let in. I am your host, Dr. Jeff Armstrong. I am not a theologian or a philosopher, at least by training. I am a PhD exercise physiologist with an interest in the intersection of the spiritual and the physical. In this episode, I want to talk about something fundamental, not just to religion or spirituality, but to being human. We were never meant to do this alone, and yet more and more of us are. What happened to community? Not the word we throw around in hashtags or email sign-offs, but the sacred, embodied, transformative experience of being with others in meaningful ways. In this episode, I'm going to explore the spiritual crisis of disconnection, what ancient wisdom and modern science say about community, and why recovering the sacred dimension of togetherness might be one of the most radical acts we can take in a fractured world. Let's start with the reality. We are experiencing a profound crisis of disconnection. Loneliness is considered a public health crisis. It's currently a pandemic. The U.S. Surgeon General issued a report in 2023 declaring the lack of social connection increases the risk of early death as much as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Loneliness is a major risk factor for disease. But loneliness is more than a health statistic. It's a spiritual wound. It shows up as hyper-independence, as numbing, as that subtle ache when you scroll, looking for something that never quite arrives. It shows up when we say to someone, "How you doing?" It shows up when we say, "I'm fine," but mean, I don't know who to tell I'm not. In her book, The Wisdom of Your Body, Hilary McBride says, "We are not thinking machines that feel. We are feeling creatures that think," unquote. And I would add, we are relational creatures. Our minds, our bodies, our souls are wired for connection. Connection, or lack thereof, is a spiritual problem. Let's pause here and define our terms, because community has become one of those spiritualized buzzwords. We talk about community as our neighborhoods. We talk about community as our churches. We talk about community when we discuss politics. But the kind of community we're talking about today is not about potlucks or group chats. It's not a social network or a Facebook group. It's not even about being around people. We're talking about community in the spiritual sense. Remember, on this podcast, we discuss spiritual as the acknowledgement of something greater than self. Community, it's about being known, being mirrored, being invited into mutual formation. Community is about knowing, actively mirroring, inviting others into mutual formation. The word communion comes from the Latin communio, meaning sharing in common. At its root, community is spiritual. It's sacramental. And the lack of it, that's not just a social problem. It's a spiritual problem. In our society today, we don't just suffer from loneliness. We suffer from a loss of shared meaning. We've turned belonging into branding, ritual into performance, and identity into algorithms. But real community is slow. It's physical. It's messy. It's mutual. It is spiritual. And it's necessary. Let's go back. In indigenous traditions across the world, community wasn't a lifestyle choice. It was a reality. Every person belonged to the tribe. Every ritual was collective. Every story was a shared memory. In the early Christian church, the Greek word koinonia described a spiritual fellowship that wasn't just about faith. It was about food, housing, economic life. It was a radical independence. Monastic communities from the deserts of Egypt to the forests of Ireland were built around rhythms of prayer, labor, silence, and communal discernment. Even in ancient Eastern philosophy, the emphasis was rarely on the isolated self. Confucianism placed moral development in the context of family and society. Buddhism emphasized Sangha, the community of practitioners, as one of the three jewels of the path. You see, for thousands of years, people understood something we've forgotten, that the soul cannot be formed in isolation. So what happened? Well, we got efficient. We got mobile. We got digital. Modernity prized the autonomous individual. Capitalism rewarded self-reliance. Technology promised constant contact, but delivered curated delusion. And religion, for many, became either toxic, transactional, or simply trivial. So we went searching for spirituality without structure, meaning without community. We became seekers without circles. And while there's beauty in that seeking, it also leaves us vulnerable for what Parker Palmer calls functional atheism, the belief that if anything is going to happen, it's up to me. That's not just exhausting, it's spiritually distorted, because we're not just tired from doing too much, we're tired from doing it alone. I've talked about my mantra, I am third. My God is first, my family and friends are second, and I am third. This can be exhausting without community or a sense of purpose. I struggle with it, and I would consider myself a spiritual person. Without a strong community, we can sometimes feel like Cepheus in Greek mythology. Let's get scientific for a moment. Neuroscience confirms what ancient traditions knew intuitively. We are wired for connection. Social neuroscientists have shown that our brains are shaped by relationships. Our sense of self is formed in mirrored neurons in mutual regulation. Our immune systems respond to isolation the same way they respond to physical injury. In other words, your body experiences loneliness as danger. It generates a sort of fight or flight response. But here's the good news. Connection also heals. Shared rituals, laughter, eye contact, singing, storytelling. These aren't extras. They're essential spiritual technologies. And yet, how many of us have regular, meaningful, embodied communal experiences like these? I mean, truly meaningful experiences, not the shallow followings we have come to rely on social media. So where do we go from here? Let me suggest a few invitations, not solutions, because this isn't a problem to solve. It's a practice to recover. First, reclaim ritual. Start small. A weekly meal, lighting a candle, sharing a moment of silence. Ritual grounds us in shared time and presence. Second, find or form circles. Look for spaces of honest, vulnerable, spiritual conversation. And if they don't exist, start one. Imperfectly. Trust that others are longing too. These don't have to be religious groups. They don't have to be people to share your beliefs. In fact, I encourage you to have dialogue, civil discourse, with people you don't necessarily agree with. Seek common ground. Seek community. Number 3, stay. In a world that swipes and scrolls, staying is revolutionary. Community will disappoint you. People will be awkward. That's part of it. Sacred community is forged, not found. Number 4, embody it. Digital connection has its place, but the body still needs bodies. Face to face, skin to skin, side by side. Show up in person when you can. Maybe it's time to end the endless Zoom meetings and remote workplaces. Connect in 3 dimensions. Let's add a spiritual dimension and call it 4 dimensions. Number 5, make space for the sacred. Whether it's prayer, breath, song, or silence. Make time not just for each other, but for spirit in your midst. Let that presence be real, not just a metaphor. These can be done regardless of our community, whether a single person living alone, a family, large or small, a young couple, empty nesters, retirees, co-workers, or neighbors. We can reclaim ritual, find or form circles, stay, show up in person, and above all, make space for the sacred. There is a line from African philosophy of Ubuntu, I am because we are. That's not just a beautiful idea. It's a spiritual truth. You don't have to do this alone. You weren't meant to. Your healing, your growth, your sacred becoming. It's not just a solo project. It's a shared unfolding. So ask yourself, not just what do I believe, but who are my people? Not just what do I do with my life, but who am I doing it with? Because in the end, our salvation, if we dare to use that word, will not come through separation. It will come through belonging. It will come through community. It will come through remembering that, yes, we have a spiritual problem. And that problem might be answered in the faces, hands, and hearts of those we're willing to do life with. Yes, we have a spiritual problem, but we also have a spiritual answer. Thank you for listening to We Have a Spiritual Problem. If this episode spoke to something in you, share it. Start a conversation. Sit in a circle. And above all, don't do it alone. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of others.